The year was 2010. The world was introduced to minions. I was taught to never say no to a panda. The last actually, let's just forget about that one. And the protagonist of today's tale, Leon, was about to attend a Yu-Gi-Oh regional qualifier in hopes to qualify for the Canadian National Championship the following year. You see, whilst Leon enjoyed playing Yu-Gi-Oh, he didn't actually get to play very often because he was a judge, meaning nearly all the Yu-Gi-Oh events he attended, he spent time judging rather than participating. So although there were plenty more opportunities to qualify, chances are he might not get the chance to play, so he hoped to qualify here to avoid stressing about it later on. For this event, Leon decided to bring Frog Monarchs, a deck that summons a bunch of small frogs to use them as tribute fodder to tribute summon some big boys. Now although this deck wasn't considered the best deck in the format, that would be Infinity, which at the time was looping harder than your average NASCAR race, the deck was still considered to be one of the better decks around, and certainly a contender to win this event. Our story begins towards the end of the day, as after a long, grueling day of dueling, Leon had managed to win his way up to the final. Leon walked over to his table and took a seat as he patiently waited for his opponent to arrive. Not too long after, a man approached the table before taking a seat across from him. At first, he seemed like a fairly chill guy. For now. And after both players exchanged some greetings, they began setting up their sides of the table. Now as a part of his setup, Leon prepares both a calculator and a pen and paper in the form of a tiny pink notebook in order to keep track of life points. Keep this in mind for later. Game 1 begins, and ends rather quickly, with Leon getting completely dumpstered. Turns out it was a mirror match, with his opponent also being on Monarch Frog, and he simply drew a way better hand. So we move on to Game 2. And this is where the fun begins. You see, Leon had prepared a little surprise for his opponent, something he prepared just in case he encountered a mirror match. He knew the main source of removal for the deck was effects that had to target cards, so he had just the card in mind. The duel begins, and a couple of turns later, Leon manages to set up a field of Swap Frog, Treeborn Frog, and was currently staring down a singular monster summoned by his opponent. Perfect. Leon activates Soul Exchange, a card that allows him to use a monster on his opponent's field as tribute, combining that along with the 2 frogs on his own field, and he had 3 tributes to tribute summon Obelisk the Tormentor, a card which, despite its rather prestigious reputation, only really has one useful feature. He cannot be targeted by card effects. Now Obelisk also comes with a bit of a downside, where if he was special summoned, he is destroyed at the end of the turn. Thankfully, this Obelisk was simply tribute summoned, not special summoned. Keep this in mind for later. Now as he used Soul Exchange this turn, he is unable to go to the battle phase, so simply passes the turn. His opponent begins his turn by immediately slamming down his own copy of Soul Exchange, before exclaiming, "Get that shit off the field, I sacrifice your god for my monarch." Leon casually rotates his obelisk around before sliding it towards his opponent, and then tapping his finger on the effect. Neither player can target this card with card effects. His opponent, looking a little flustered, reaches over and picks up the card. A few moments of silence go by before his opponent, now looking rather agitated, states, "This should have gone to the graveyard at the end of the last turn anyway." Oh boy, here we go. Leon quickly explains that it was only destroyed if the card was special summoned, to which this obelisk was not. This was met by a rather loud, "Judge!" and a raising of an arm high into the air. Now the funny thing about this judge call was this game was a final, so the judge was already sitting at the table with them watching the game. The judge simply turned his head slowly to look at his opponent. "Dude, I'm right here." Obelisk was not specialed and therefore is not destroyed. Please continue. As the opponent had no out to the obelisk, this game ended rather quickly, and they moved on to Game 3. And this one was a bit of a slugfest, with frogs being tributed left, right and centre for a whole bunch of different effects over multiple turns, which in turn caused a bunch of chip damage to each player's life points, all of which was being recorded by Leon in his tiny pink notebook. Leon's life points had been whittled down to 2,800, and his opponent had recently cleared Leon's final remaining monster with Caius the Shadow Monarch, whose effect simply banishes a monster from the field. He was now left completely open to a direct attack from Caius. His opponent smacked Leon down for 2,400 points of damage, to which Leon then responded by activating Gauze the Emissary of Darkness. This card can special summon itself upon taking battle damage and summon a token with attack equal to the damage you took. You can't do that, I just killed you. Leon looked up at his opponent and raised an eyebrow. Last time I checked, 2,800 minus 2,400 isn't 0. I still have life points. Judge! Once again, the judge, sitting less than a meter away, turned his head slowly. Bro, seriously? I'm right. Whatever. Do you have a written record of life points? His opponent remained silent. Leon handed over his pink notebook to the judge, who confirms that it's accurate based on what he's seen throughout the match. He then asked the rather angry opponent to proceed with the duel. This did not make him very pleased, and he immediately started demanding an appeal to the head judge. A few moments go by before the head judge arrives at the table, and after hearing the problem, simply repeated the same process as the previous judge. Sir, do you have a written record of the life points? His opponent snarled as he mumbled something under his breath. The judge then reached over and grabbed the pink notebook, before turning to the other judge. Does this record seem accurate based on what you've seen? He nodded gently in response. Cool, he hasn't lost the game yet, please proceed. His opponent, furious at this point, began loudly cursing up a storm, but in French. Leon had absolutely no idea what the words meant, but he knew for sure they weren't pretty. But as it turns out, someone at the table did know French. The table judge. I'm sorry, what did you just say? Did you just admit to cheating? His opponent suddenly stopped talking as his face started going a little bit pale. Apparently during his French outburst, he'd accidentally incriminated himself by straight up admitting to purposely lying about the life totals. Alright, I'm sick of this. The table judge grabbed the match slip and shoved it in front of Leon. Sign this, you're the winner. I'm going to go back to my hotel and sleep. His opponent had been disqualified, and therefore Leon had won the match. And that is going to mark the end of today's tale. Thank you so much, Leon, for sharing your story in the comment section of one of my previous videos. And as per usual, if you too have a story or tale from your time playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And would like to have it recreated in this series, feel free to write it down in the comments down below. Just make sure to leave enough context and detail so I can turn it into a full video. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And if you'd like to see more stories just like this one, I've created a full playlist of this series which I will leave a link to at the top of the description. Or you can click that little card on screen now. Thank you guys for watching and I hope to see you in the next one. Laters.